Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, everyone, so much for making the time to be here at this very important webinar entitled "Why Aren't There More Women Making Decisions?" Of course, as you all know, today's seminar is held in conjunction with International Women's Day, which is today, and whose theme this year is hashtag Choose to Challenge. Uh, just let me very quickly register on behalf of ISIS Malaysia our thanks and gratitude to the US Embassy in Kuala Lumpur uh, for their collaboration in convening this foreign policy speaker series. This series began on 10th of February 2021 and aims to cover themes of global foreign policy, environment, economics and trade, women's empowerment, global public health, human rights, South China Sea, cyber policy, among others. These webinars feature speakers from Malaysia and the US who will share their expertise and discuss the implications from Malaysia, US, and Malaysia-US relations. In today's webinar, we are indeed honored to have both His Excellency, U.S. Ambassador Designate to Malaysia, Mr. Brian McFetus, and Mr. Herizal Hazri, Chief Executive of ISIS Malaysia, joining us alongside our distinguished panelists, Ms. Beverly Kirk from CSIS, USA, and Ms. Tashni Sukumaran, founder of 5050, Malaysia.com. As we start, we'll have some opening remarks, first from Ambassador Designate McFetus and Mr. Herizal, of about 5 minutes each. So may I invite first U.S. Ambassador Designate to Malaysia, Ambassador Brian McFetus, to give his opening remarks. If I may just quickly introduce him. His Excellency Brian D. McFetus arrived on 26 February 2021 to assume his position as Ambassador Designate to the United States of Malaysia of America to Malaysia. A career member of the Senior Foreign Service, Mr. McFetus previously served as Deputy Chief of Mission to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, Senior Advisor in the Office of the Counselor to the Secretary of State, and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in the State Department's Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs in Washington. I note that this isn't his first posting to Malaysia. He was the political counselor of the U.S. Embassy in Kuala Lumpur from 2009 to 2011, so he knows this well. On behalf of ISIS Malaysia and all present, we welcome you back to Malaysia and we wish you every success to your posting here. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Selamat sejahtera dan selamat pagi. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be back in Malaysia and able to join you this morning. As many of you know, I first served in Malaysia 10 years ago as the head of the political section at the U.S. Embassy. I had a great experience working with my Malaysian government counterparts, with civil society and the diplomatic community. And so with that background, it's wonderful now to be able to return as ambassador, as I have the firsthand perspective of what we can achieve when we work together. Today is a perfect example of that, as we turn our focus to gender equality and further actions that can be taken to make progress and address the global challenge of ensuring greater representation of women at higher levels of leadership. This needs to be a priority for all of us, Americans, Malaysians, men, women, and not just in March and not just on International Women's Day, but every day of the year. I would like to thank Mr. Herizal and the ISIS Malaysia team for hosting this important discussion today and for using their convening power to bring in so many thoughtful leaders and contributors. I would also like to thank our esteemed speakers joining us today. From the United States, we are happy to have Ms. Beverly Kirk from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, And from here in Malaysia, Ms. Tashni Sukumaran from the 50/50 Foundation. Let me say a word about what's going on in the United States. Since taking office in January, President Biden has pledged to restore America's leading role as a champion for women and girls around the world and return to a government-wide focus of uplifting the rights of women and girls globally. President Biden has pledged to reinvigorate the Department of State's Office of Global Women's Issues, as well as a White House Gender Policy Council that will specifically focus on how it could be employed to promote global gender equality. To promote full participation of women, President Biden and his team have identified areas of focus, including healthcare, economic security, work and family, violence against women, and empowerment for women across the globe. You know, in the United States, we're still celebrating the inauguration of Kamala Harris as the first woman and person of color to become vice president, an occasion that was too long in coming, but still a historic and important milestone. When Kamala Harris was sworn in as America's first female vice president, she became a role model for women and girls around the world. As she said in her remarks on election night, quote, "Every little girl watching sees that this is a country of possibilities," unquote. She encouraged those girls to, quote, "dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before," unquote. In addition, 6 of 11 confirmed cabinet members are women, and several are women of color. And here at the Department of State, Secretary of State Blinken's 2 most senior deputies, if confirmed by the Senate, will be experienced women diplomats. The composition of Biden's cabinet matters because research shows that diverse teams can provide leaders with valuable information that ultimately results in more effective public policies. Building a government that, in President Biden's words, looks like America, sends a positive message to Americans of all backgrounds. It also sends a message to the world that the US values gender inclusion and diversity. Turning to Malaysia. Malaysia has experienced similar important milestones, including the appointment of a woman as the former Deputy Prime Minister and a current female Chief Justice, the highest position in Malaysia, in the Malaysian judicial system, along with many other senior women officials. I know that here in Malaysia, another Kamala, my predecessor, Kamala Lakhdir, was a vocal champion for equality and prioritized this in all of our programs and engagements. And by the way, Kamala now has a senior position working for Secretary Biden back in Washington. I plan to do the same. During my 30-year career with the US State Department, several of the best bosses I've worked for have been women. At the same time, senior officials in the department like me recognize that more needs to be done to increase women's leadership in the State Department. Here at our embassy, I note that several of the most senior leaders are women, and as ambassador, I plan to recruit more. Women-focused programs are also an important aspect of what our embassy does. When I first started receiving updates about our work here in Malaysia, I was impressed and pleased to see the focus on empowering women. Over the past year, we launched 2 prominent economic empowerment programs in support of Wanita Empowered, Women Empowered. The Academy for Women Entrepreneurs program was launched in September 2020, focusing on aspiring or newly established female entrepreneurs with a viable business idea and building capacity through workshops and mentoring. I'm happy to learn that this flagship State Department program has recently been renewed for another year here in Malaysia. The Wanita Empowered Business Mentorship Program was launched in November 2020, and it targets established women entrepreneurs who are looking to advance to the next level through business mentoring and networking. Another example of women's empowerment is our Waisili Women's Leadership Academy, which sends Malaysian women to regional workshops every year, though like most things, these are virtual for the time being. I believe one of our speakers is a Waisili graduate. The YLA network in Malaysia is very active and conducts many outreach activities to educate and empower young women. In addition, the Embassy is conducting a series of virtual talks on women's economic and civic empowerment and has highlighted a number of these experts, along with our alumni and key partners, in a video campaign on our Facebook page. We will continue devoting the year to raising awareness on these issues and expanding opportunities for Malaysian women. I look forward to further enhancing our collaboration and continuing to learn from each other while also strengthening our friendship and partnership. In closing, I would like to wish everyone in Malaysia Selamat Menyambut Hari Wanita Sedunia, welcoming the celebration of Women's Day. Thank you all for being part of this event. I'm excited about the possibilities going forward and optimistic that we'll achieve great things together. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your opening remarks. Now, may I invite Mr. Herizal, Chief Executive of ISIS Malaysia, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Herizal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Terrence. Selamat pagi semua. Terima kasih Tuan Yang Terutama, Brian McFetus, kerana sudi untuk meluangkan sedikit masa bersama kami di pagi ini. Thank you very much, His Excellency Brian McFetus, for being able to spend some of your time this morning to be with us. This is really an excellent opportunity for ISIS to be able, I have a development specialist always been focused on is actually the world in many different areas ranging from democratization, elections, empowerment in general for businesses, helping small businesses, as well as reaching out to affected women who are affected in conflict areas around the world. Now I'm back in Malaysia. I've been back since 10 years actually, and I've continued to do some of that work. And I'm very pleased that at ISIS, moving forward, this is going to be one of the key areas that we are looking to expand our capacity, as well as work very closely with the government of Malaysia and the government around the world who sees ISIS as a viable partner on these issues. I don't want to take too much time this morning. I think Ambassador Designate Brian McFetus have already said quite a bit about how important this event is, both for Malaysia as well as the United States of America. I'm very eager to hear what the speakers would have to say. And I wish everybody a wonderful session this morning. And again, on behalf of ISIS, terima kasih US Embassy for partnering with ISIS. And we would really like to continue this partnership moving forward in the future. Terima kasih sekali lagi. Thank you very much again. And back to you, Terrence.
Thank you so much, Mr. Herizal, Chief Executive of ISIS Malaysia, for your opening remarks. Now, before we jump into the speakers, if I may just lay a few groundkeeping rules. We will have remarks of 10 minutes per speaker and about 45 minutes at the end for question and answer. Just a note about the question and answer. Please post your questions using the Q&A window, which is located either at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen, depending on whether you're on the computer or a mobile device. And here you can also vote on questions asked by others which you may resonate with or feel important, as well as post your own questions. And during the question and answer session, my co-moderator, Ms. Tengku Qistina, will then channel 2 to 3 questions per round for a panelist to answer. And we'll pick from the top rated questions in the Q&A box. So if I may quickly reintroduce this forum entitled, Why Aren't There More Women Making Decisions? We'll explore how governments and societies can ensure greater women's representation at higher levels of political leadership in the United States, in Malaysia, and the rest of the world. Today, as mentioned, which is International Women's Day 2021, has the theme of choose to challenge. And we, from the website, a challenged world is an alert world. Individually, we are all responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day, every day. We can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. We can all choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Collectively, we can all help create an inclusive world. Now, there are some questions. I don't want to preempt the speakers, but there are some questions that arise. Why is there a glass ceiling for women in politics? Why does it persist? How can the change in domestic US politics influence global change in gender inequality for the better? As mentioned by His Excellency, the US Ambassador Designate, the Biden-Harris administration's reestablishment of the Gender Office and the Gender Policy Council is a key and a key move. But a key difference from the past, the Gender Policy Council will report directly to the president. And if I may quote Jennifer Klein, the co-chair, this is not just a council, it is a plan to take a government-wide approach to gender equity and equality. So, some questions arise. What kinds of structures and incentives need to be in place to propel more women to leadership positions? How can the US and Malaysia continue to work together in promoting policy to empower women? And also in light of the current COVID pandemic, as countries who have been affected, countries, families, individuals are making plans to cope and recover from this pandemic. It's essential that women, as well as other groups, are included meaningfully at the table in all the processes to come, to be enabled and empowered to play a full role in shaping the pivotal decisions to come, which are being made right now and will impact the future. So without further ado, talked too much already, let me invite our first speaker, Ms. Qistina Sukumaran, founder of 5050malaysia.com. Just as a quick introduction, I'm sure you all have their bios. Qistina is a journalist, researcher, and human rights defender who's worked for the Free Malaysia Today, the Star, South China Morning Post. She's the founder of 5050 Malaysia, a database on women experts in Malaysia. She operates Collective Bunga Raya, a support group for survivors of sexual harassment and violence and emotional abuse, and is also active in Cyber, an initiative that works to reclaim digital spaces for women. Qistina, the floor is yours.
Hi, Terrence. Thank you for that introduction. It was actually quite comprehensive, so I have nothing to add. I'm just going to go straight into what I wanted to say today. And happy International Women's Day, everybody. And Beverly, I'm so glad to be sharing space with you, even if it's virtually. I hope we can meet in person one day. And also thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us, and Mr. Herizal. All right, so straight into it, where I want to talk about political involvement of women in Malaysia. And there are some statistics which I think are key that we have to point out. We had our first female deputy speaker in parliament just recently. We've yet to reach a 30% goal of women representatives in state and parliament. So the Interparliamentary Union did a study recently and ranked us 145th out of 192 countries. And our percentage of parliamentarians who are women is under 15%, meaning about 1 in 7, because we have 222 MPs. And it gets even worse at the state level. We only have about 600 state assemblymen, women, people. Only about 11% are women, so that's about 68, 69%. So obviously this is a problem in that we're just not hitting this 30% goal, and we're not even nearing it. I mean, if you look at sort of the breakdown of all the parliaments we've had, it doesn't seem to be increasing at a pace that's commensurate with how many more women are entering sort of the workforce and are in high-ranking corporate positions. You see this lag. So are some sort of efforts to address this. For example, the Penang state government has put forward a proposal to equalize this, something called top up women only additional seats. So that looks at sort of closed list proportional representation. Now, there are some legal barriers because under the Constitution, we practice a single member constituency policy, but you could have nominated members, which is allowed in the Constitution. So this is like a very, very new proposal, but it's really, really interesting to see certain state governments taking such a proactive approach and wanting to sort of come up with dynamic solutions. All right, so this is something that's the status quo. But if we look at sort of why it's happened, I think it all points to this being an endemic problem that starts like sort of at the cradle itself, right? We can trace it back to childcare, both access and in and of itself, right? So there are knock-on effects. We don't want these efforts that we put in place to be limited to just those who are closer to leadership already. So this sort of elite, foreign, overseas educated, well-off, who are more predisposed to entering politics in Malaysia, rather than maybe those who could enter this arena if they were given the sufficient, like necessary assistance to do so. Because I think doing this sort of mythologizes the idea of bootstrapping, right? You've got a very small proportion of women who've made it up, and you're telling younger women, well, you could do it too if you work really hard, but what we should be doing is improving policy so that it's accessible. So I'm just gonna run you through some statistics that I found that came up after the pandemic. Now, unemployment post the lockdown that we had last year, which lasted for about 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, 6,002, I'm sure the figures are much higher, but this is based on sort of the survey results that I have. So about 6,200 men were unemployed compared to tens of thousands women above 40,000. This of course includes sort of informal sectors, yeah? And part of this is because women had to abandon sort of their informal work because the care burden was disproportionately placed on them, right? And if we do not put in place some sort of meaningful policy, we're going to really, really depress the labor force participation rate in the country, which is already poor because even though we have more female university graduates than men, once they become pregnant and give birth, the rate of re-entry into the workforce is very low. So yeah, so female unemployment worsened very much, 5.5% compared to men, which is about 4.5%. And a lot of what they describe as prime age workers, right, dropped out of the labor force in the last year compared to any time in the last 5 years. Most of them, according to the survey, said that it was due to caregiving and family obligations. So obviously there's this huge issue in terms of childcare and unpaid care work. And as a woman like of that age, if you're thinking about these things, you're not going to be thinking about your involvement in politics, whether grassroots or state level or federal level. It's just not something that you can create mind space for. You wouldn't even have time to sort of go and volunteer at your local service center, which is how I think a lot of people start out in politics at younger ages, right? So the policy movements that could be put in place here would be paternity leave. There's a strong argument for paternity leave and a strong push for it as well amongst women's rights groups. We should be increasing paid maternity leave, right? We should also, currently there is a tax exemption for childcare support, but it actually is quite regressive because it's not targeted and it doesn't consider tax ineligible households, which one would argue need these incentives or exemptions, well, not exemptions, but need incentives most. So the Women's Aid Organization actually did another survey recently, and it said that a whopping 79% of all women workers surveyed reported increased burden of domestic and unpaid care work since the onset of the pandemic, right? And almost all reported unemployment or loss in income. So you've got this double whammy of you do have to earn money for the household, but you also have to do this care work, which is unpaid and often unseen. And I think, was it UNICEF or the United Nations did another study here with the DM Analytics, which showed that a lot of these lower income households were female led and only had savings of about 300 ringgit if the worst were to happen, you know, if everyone in the family were to be unemployed. And these were female-led households. So this is one very, very major policy step that I think is a huge stumbling block to women's participation in politics or even high-level corporate decision-making. When you're worried about the children and it's seen as a gendered form of labor, you're never not going to go very far. The other thing I would like to point out is education and protection of girls and women. So we need to look further at girl-child vulnerabilities and gender-based violence. And this is not exclusive to Malaysia, yeah? This is all countries. It's a perennial issue and it's a global issue. But I can only speak from the Malaysian context, which is that there have been some movements. The last budget saw 21 million ringgit allocated to shelters, but it was lower than many people would have preferred and many people asked for. If I remember, women's groups asked for 50 million, which is about more than double. There's also a dearth of social workers in Malaysia. We've got about 1 per 9,000 people. And if you see Singapore or the UK, they've got about 1 to 3,000, which is, you know, a big difference. So then there's that access to safety that net is missing. And I think it comes back down to this, right? You've got problems at every level. You've got women at already these high levels of policy making, but there's so few of them. So there's that limitation. There's that perception of a glass ceiling. And on the other side, with this access to childcare, access to healthcare and social protection, you've got a sticky floor. So how do you launch yourself is the next question. And then how do you break through the ceiling is the other. Turning to examples from the region and from the world, I, for one, was really interested to see articles about the White House Gender Policy Council. I thought it was great to see it back, and I think it looks like it's going to have teeth. So I'm very keen to see what happens. Now, I know that domestic models don't always lend themselves to foreign policy, but it would be interesting to see if this kind of cooperation can be forged in other countries, a bit carefully perhaps, but you know, maybe working with the women's ministry here or other countries. And I think there is definitely appetite in Southeast Asia. If you look at the ASEAN-US summit if you look at the ASEAN summit last year, there was actually a special meeting on social protection for women and girls, which shows this appetite. So there could be some sort of putting this on the agenda at the ASEAN-US summit when the time rolls around. I don't want to take up too much time, and I hope I haven't spoken too fast. As you can see, this is a topic that's very dear to my heart. The other thing I would actually like to mention just in winding up is that there also needs to be a way to access sort of the women expertise we have. And that's something that 50/50 Malaysia tries to do. It's a database of women experts in, on, or from Malaysia. And I found that during my time as a journalist, it was actually one of those things where we wanted to platform women. We wanted to speak to them and share their opinions and share their views, right? But there were two major stumbling blocks. One is that we didn't know how to access them. And two, when we did manage to contact them or access them, they were frequently a lot busier than you would think, than you would, sorry, it's my cat. They were frequently a lot busier than their male counterparts. Now, I'm not saying I know why, but I'm wondering if a lot of it had to do with this burden of running the household and childcare, which is still culturally thrust upon women in Malaysian society. Anyway, so that is my presentation for today. I hope to take some questions later about this, both about cooperation on a regional and global level, and of course, just access in Malaysia and other barriers.
Thank you so much, Tashley. Definitely some very important points you raised there in the glass ceiling and floor as well, sticky floor, and also sharing Penang's initiatives, and also on women, not just representation in politics, but also economics and etc. If I now may go to our next speaker, Miss Beverly Kirk. She is Fellow and Director for Outreach, International Security Program, Center for Strategic and International Studies, and also the Director for Smart Women, Smart Power Initiative. Um, if From her bio, I could quickly touch on the Smart Women, Smart Power Initiative, which includes a speaker series, a podcast series, and also private events and roundtables, featuring powerful conversations with women leaders from around the globe who are experts in foreign policy, national security, international business, and development. So certainly a lot of breadth and depth that Beverly is bringing to this. So please, Beverly, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Terrence, and thank you so much to everyone who's in the audience today. I'm really excited to participate and celebrate International Women's Day with you. Thank you to the US Embassy and Ambassador McFeeters, and to the Institute of Strategic and International Studies for hosting this conversation. Tashni, I'm so excited to share the platform with you and have this conversation. And I'm also very excited because I get to celebrate International Women's Day twice, once here with you right now, and then at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday here in the United States, the Smart Women, Smart Power Initiative will have an event, and I will be moderating it, and that will be in the middle of the night for you, but it will be on our website so you can watch it later. Some points that I want to raise for our conversation today. According to Catalyst, the proportion of women in senior management is growing. It was 29% in 2020. That's the highest number recorded to date. However, women are overrepresented in support functions and in administrative roles. According to UN Women, currently 22 countries have women as head of state or head of government, but 119 countries, including my own, have never had a woman head of state. Getting closer with Vice President Harris, but we've never had a woman president, at least not yet. Also, according to UN Women's latest fact sheet, just 4 countries have 50% or more women in parliament in the single or lower houses: Rwanda, Cuba, Bolivia, and the United Arab Emirates. In the corporate sector, about 8% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. The number is 41, which is a new record. So I list off all of those stats to say that while the number of women in leadership and decision-making roles may be lower than I think anyone would like them to be, they're generally speaking getting better. They're better than they used to be. And the trend seems to be moving in the right direction, even if it's moving more slowly than any of us would like. But to echo what Tashni said, we have to keep an eye on the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's really impacting women in the workplace. According to McKinsey's Women in the Workplace report in 2020, women, and specifically women of color, were much more likely to be laid off or furloughed than men. And that report also found that more than 1 in 4 women have thought about downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce altogether because of the challenges that the pandemic has presented. Tashni mentioned the increased workload at home, since women often handle a disproportionate amount of the unpaid care work or the household labor duties. So the pandemic's potential to impact women who are hopefully on the leadership track or already in positions of leadership where they hope to move even higher into decision-making roles, that's something that we really do have to watch. And I think it's also worth noting on International Women's Day that women leaders such as New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern have handled their country's responses to the pandemic pretty well. I really want to talk about the Smart Women, Smart Power initiative in the context of the question on the table for this conversation. Why aren't there more women making decisions? And just to give you a little bit of information on Smart Women, it launched at the end of 2014 to provide a platform for women experts, specifically in foreign policy, national and international security, international business, and international development, to have a place where their knowledge and their expertise would be recognized, celebrated, and showcased as what's possible for next-gen women and men in these fields. And we wanted to expand the image of what an expert looks like, particularly in areas of hard security. We wanted to show that women have expertise in these areas, and we wanted to make sure that their voices were heard. Because when we started out, most of the experts leading conversations in those 4 bucket areas that I mentioned were mostly men. And when the question came up about, oh, why aren't women leading these conversations in these fields? The answer was often, well, we just can't find women to speak who are experts. When really, more often than not, the women experts existed, they just hadn't been asked. They were there and they had expertise and knowledge to offer, and we decided we would be the place where that platform would exist for them to do that. And related to the question of the hour, if we want more women in decision-making roles and in leadership in government and business and security all across the board, we have to make sure that their expertise and knowledge are seen and heard. And this is one of among many, many, many reasons that there aren't more women decision makers. But I think this is an area that we need to talk about a bit more, because I think we need to make it the norm that when someone says, I need a leader for X job or a decision maker on a specific topic, a lot of times that default expert is a man. We need to make it the norm that it's just as likely to be a woman. And I think once we do that, we will see a much faster rate of women climbing into leadership decisions. Again, there are many other factors, but I think this is one that we need to pay attention to. And I will close by quoting the late Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, who back in 1972 was the first Black woman to run for US president. She was famous for saying, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Well, I would add to that, if women don't have a platform for their expertise and their knowledge to show that they are decision makers and that they are leaders and should be in these positions, that maybe we just might need to build our own platforms in order to make sure that we're seen and heard. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Beverly, for your insights, and certainly some key points there. Touching on, although there's progress, it's slow and not what we expected, but also keeping an eye out for the type of progress that we are making, and making sure it's not just increasing number of women, but in what roles, what specific positions and roles that they're playing, and also promoting and expanding the visibility, making sure that expertise is seen and heard, and also touching on sort of behavioral change in terms of perceptions and expectations of traditional roles. So if I may, again, just a gentle, a quick reminder, all questions, please do post it to the question and answer box, where you can also view other questions and, upvote, questions that resonate with you. So now I would like to introduce my co-moderator, Ms. Tengku Qistina, who will help us really run this session. So we will take 2 to 3 questions in a round and post them to our panelists, who will then answer, and then we'll go on to the next round as time allows. So Qistina, please take it away for the first round.
Thank you so much, Terrence. Thank you so much, Tashi, and thank you so much, Beverly, for that presentation. What I've gathered is there are 3 questions that are pending, and 2 of them are currently for more focus for Tashi and 1 for Beverly. If I may, there is a question from Andrew Koo, who asks and quotes that political religious groups themselves have a certain input for women in public leadership. Andrew Koo has actually asked about your thoughts and comments on the political religious resistance to women in public leadership. This is in follow-up to what Ms. Tashni has actually mentioned in regards to Malaysia having a woman deputy prime minister. And the second question itself is from Hafsa Hashim, who has actually mentioned that, and actually is wondering about the hurdles that women face in, the hurdles that women face, and that hampers them from being appointed at such a decision-making level. And she's wondering how the 50-50 Club can actually do what they can do about this. Now, Ms. Beverly, a question for you is in regards to women in STEM itself. This question comes from Ms. Sharifah Noor, who actually mentioned that given what the Ambassador, His Excellency, has actually said, she asked for your views and thoughts on what the US and Malaysia can offer and introduce women in STEM. That includes women in STEM education, careers, as well as businesses. So if Ms. Tashi and Ms. Beverly may, please.
Should I go first, or would you like to, Beverly?
Let me unmute myself. Please, by all means, go right ahead.
All right. Qistina, I didn't actually get the second question. Could we just hear that again, please?
Sure. The question comes from Hafsa Hashim, who actually asked about the hurdles that women face. What you think, based on your research and your expertise and your experience itself, what have they been? And what can your 50-50 Malaysia do about these hurdles that these women face in actually being in a public position? Thanks.
Great. Okay. So the first question from Andrew. Hi, Andrew. On sort of religious hurdles and stumbling blocks, I do think that there is a space for proper education, because I don't think it's so much religious as it is just the patriarchy. There, although he's not mentioned the religion, I think that in all religions there are sort of strong sort of evidence and stories about women in strong positions of leadership. I mean, Malaysia is a majority Muslim country, and you can look at sort of the position of the Prophet's wives and how they were very widely respected and wanted as leaders and influential in their own right. So I don't think that should be seen as any sort of barrier religion. I think it really just comes down to the patriarchy and education and eradicating these really regressive attitudes, which of course will take time. It's not an easy battle to fight, but that's why we're all here. Secondly, the hurdles that women face, I think it goes back to a culture of seeing certain roles in the household as inherently gendered. And I think it comes back down to as well this idea that women should be, to put it crudely, seen and not heard, right? So I've noticed that women, and this is just anecdotal, but I've noticed that women in academia, for example, tend to publish a lot more than men, but they have fewer speaking engagements, which I think is a very strange, Beverly is nodding, I think she's noticed it too, it's very strange. But so I at the risk of sounding sort of a bit of a misandrist, which is a legitimate feminist position, I mean, is it just that women are doing the work and men are sort of getting on television? So the 50-50 initiative hopes to sort of equalize the playing field by making it more accessible for people to spotlight women. And I think we've all seen a male panel, which is just ridiculous and how egregious it is. And, you know, there's that joke, right? Like, we're going to be talking about women in security studies. Let's find all these male experts to talk about it. So 50-50 hopes to sort of limit how much this happens. And I hope to see it spread across the region maybe one day when I can afford a team.
If I could just follow up on that to comment about manels. Smart Women, Smart Power was formed also to be the anti-manel. We love men, don't get us wrong. We love to have men in the audience, but Smart Women, Smart Power exists so that women experts have a platform where their expertise and knowledge can be seen and heard. It's so important, that platform, because if women aren't seen and heard, then they don't get seen as the experts. They don't get seen as the people who should be talking about specific issues, particularly if they're hard security issues or STEM issues, which was what the question was that was directed to me. It's really important that women in these fields have a platform and a place to have their knowledge and expertise seen and heard. I can't emphasize that enough. I'll sound like a broken record if you let me on that. But as far as encouraging women to be in the STEM field, I think that we all bear a responsibility to encourage young girls who are interested in science and in math and in engineering to pursue those career options. I've read, and don't quote me on the stats because I may not have them exactly right, but up until about the 4th or 5th grade in the United States, there is almost equal interest between boys and girls in areas that would be considered STEM subjects like math and engineering and all different types of technical issues. And then something happens and the interest level later for young women falls off. Whatever that point is where that interest level is dropping, I think it would be really good if we could figure out that and address it. Because there's no reason why young women shouldn't pursue careers in STEM related fields. And I may just be remembering stats from the United States. This may not be the case in other countries. But I've certainly read that about the United States. But we all have a responsibility, whether it's government, whether it's schools, whether it's within the family. If a young woman displays an interest and an aptitude for science or for math from an early age, don't discourage that later on. I can speak from my own life. I had an early interest in science, and then I remember it was about 5th or 6th grade. It was like, oh, well, you're a girl, you should be more interested in, writing or in teaching or in something else like that. That was just my personal experience, but I think anecdotally, I hear that a lot in conversations that I've had with other women who are now older, but they look back at their life and there was a point where they were steered in one direction versus another as it related to science and math and technology.
Thank you, Tashi and Beverly. So, definitely interesting points there. And I think you both are actually alluding to, social and cultural structures that can, so for example, in Malaysia, we have, as you go up in education from primary to secondary to tertiary, actually more women are staying in compared to men. Yet once you go into the workforce, it gets reversed again. So perhaps maybe depending on the other questions, maybe you can also give us some insights on these social and cultural constructs that may play a role even subconsciously or more out in the open. And I'm actually talking to give Qistina a little bit of time to organize the next round of questions. So can I invite Qistina for the next round of questions?
Yes, sure thing. Well, this is great. It's like the questions just keep on coming. I've gone through a few of them, and I've noticed that a lot of these questions are actually on the hurdles that women face in regards to barriers that exist, whether in existence or not in existence. So what I'm going to be doing is that I'm actually just I'm going to touch on two things right now in regards to the hurdles that women face. First of all, and this question is posed both to Tashi as well as Beverly. The first question is in regards to the developing nation as well as having more women in public leadership and the hurdles that women face to actually get to a position in public leadership. It basically says, what's the situation right now in regards to having women in public leadership in developing nations? And can countries like India, for example, one of the largest democracies in the world, what can India do given that they have such a position to actually propel and encourage women to gain a public leadership position? The second question itself is, how do we encourage women to be more involved in foreign policy? How do we have more women be in UN General Assemblies, in becoming ambassadors, being in the UN being in the UNSC itself? So that's if I may, those are the first two questions that I would like to present and have both Beverly and Tashni speak. If it's okay, since we started with Tashni just now, Beverly, would you like to go first and then Tashni can go after? Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. As for the question about developing nations and how to propel women to leadership, first and foremost, if any woman expresses an interest in running for office, whether it is at the local, state, or national level, it's really important for not only men to support her, but other women to support her. So many times, at least, and again, I can speak only for, or only to what I see happening here in the United States, there seems to be this reluctance for women to, in some cases, not all, but sometimes there is a reluctance to put their name forward because they wonder if they will get the support not only of men, but also of other women. And I think it's really important that when women start taking these steps toward putting themselves out there, that other people join in and support them. You may not agree with them on every single point, but if there's some common ground where you feel like you could support a woman candidate, do that. Because it will help if one woman sees another woman step out there and get support, it will encourage all the other women behind her who are like, oh, she's doing that, I can do that too. And then you develop a pipeline of women who are stepping forward to find their place in public life. It's a big step to take. For some folks. For other folks, it's a really easy step to take. But I think just knowing that if you do it, there will be support there. I think that's really, really important. And that's not just in developing nations, that's in all nations. People are more reluctant to step forward if they don't think they'll have the support and the backing of the people around them. And it also is incumbent upon women to step forward and put their names forward and not wait for someone else to say, hey, you would be good at this. No, if you think I want to change what's going on in my community and I have great ideas about how to do that, go ahead and step forward. A lot of times when you do that, then that enables people around you to say, oh, you're going to do that, I'm going to support you. And at the end of the day, I think that's probably one of the biggest ways to get people to get women to put their names out there. The support is really, really important. And then the other question was how to encourage more women in foreign policy. And this is a question that I see a lot in the work that we do with Smart Women, Smart Power, particularly amongst next gen scholars. It starts out, I think, developing an interest in the world around you, the world that's larger than where you may be in particular. I know when I was growing up in a very rural area in the United States, in the state of Kentucky, I didn't know anything about foreign policy or national security, but my family always watched the evening news. And that kind of sparked an interest in the world that was broader than what I could see in front of me. And interestingly, my family always encouraged me to stay interested in the rest of the world. So if there are young women and young men who are interested in the world that's around them and their teachers notice that, encourage it, because eventually they may end up working in foreign policy. I don't think that there should be any limits or any limitations put on young children who express that kind of interest, because the earlier it starts, the longer lasting that it may indeed be.
Thank you so much, Beverly. Tashni, you have the floor. I think you're.
I did the boomer thing. It's okay. Okay, very just very quickly, because I do agree absolutely with what Beverly said about support. I think also the other thing is to dismantle sort of and this is for both questions, yeah, both foreign policy and sort of that hurdle in developing nations. I think we have to try and dismantle this idea that these arenas, politics, foreign policy, are meant for the men, and we have to stop them from being a boys' club. And I've seen sort of the rampant sexism that can go on in both these arenas, and you know what some people would refer to as locker room talk, and it's really honestly shocking. And I think sort of it begins with gender sensitivity awareness, although I hate that term. It begins with not normalizing attacks on women that are hinging on things like gender and sexuality and sort of attractiveness and or reproductive sort of, you know, status or whatever have you, you know, like if you're unmarried and childless, you're a spinster, and if you're you know, young and attractive, it's the other end of the spectrum, the sort of remarks you get. And I think that these kind of things have to be slowly dismantled and stamped out. It's why a lot of developing countries, and including, I mean, Malaysia, actually, we can include this, that we need laws against sexual harassment, laws against sort of gender-based hate speech. And I think once you limit the kind of attacks that women can receive that take aim at these very personal and painful, honestly, points, you will see a commensurate increase in participation.
Thanks so much. So as Qistina gets the next round of questions, just a reminder, we still do have about 20 minutes more. So please do keep your questions coming. And just, you know, another random comment, but I think equity and equality are truly important here. So although we ultimately aim for equality, we must recognize that equity is important to get us there. So I used to work for a children's organization, and we would always often use the example, you know, you may give the same boost to a child who's in one set of circumstances, and that may get them sort of across the line, so to speak. But another child may be facing a different set of circumstances, and that same boost, which would be equality, may not be enough to help them overcome the difficulties and challenges that they face. And here we are not just talking about challenges that that are sort of internal, that one doesn't try hard enough. We're talking really about structural, cultural, really deep-seated um, inequalities and aspects here that both our speakers rightly point out that it takes all of society effort to overcome. And hopefully that's enough for Qistina for the next round of questions.
That's actually a really great bridge to the next set of questions that I actually have. So what I've gathered from the questions that have been posed is that there's a lot of curiosity and questions on the push and pull factors. So one of the ones, you know, at the risk of sounding repetitive, what are the social and cultural walls that women may face in actually propelling forward and gaining such a leadership position? There is a mention of, you know, how there's a pipeline problem. There's a gender stereotype that exists of how for women to become a leader itself, they have to emulate men and they have to be men. Why is this so? Why do women have to fulfill a gender stereotype? Or why do women have to fulfill a certain a leadership stereotype that is highly associated and characterized by men themselves? So that's for the first question. The second question itself is on the social and cultural aspects of things, where what is it that institutions can provide? Who is responsible to provide these pull factors that allow women to actually flourish and gain these leadership positions? Who are the ones responsible to create and uplift women to make sure that they are in such leadership positions itself? So I think I'll go ahead with those two questions. I hope that's okay. And as Beverly started previously, is it okay if Tashni, you begin first, followed by Beverly?
Sure. Okay. I think both questions are quite similar, so I'm just going to sort of answer it in one go. And I think that firstly on sort of the social and cultural barriers and this idea that women have to act or perform masculinity to be respected and seen as equals is such a dangerous but pervasive idea. And it's actually quite saddening to see women buy into this myth, although I can understand why. And I think it goes back to the question of support and solidarity, in that women have to lift up other women. Women have to tell other women there is no one way to be that is correct, and push for this sort of strength in numbers way of operating, rather than one or two buying into this idea of how to perform strength and equality or equity, and using that as a shield, thinking that it will protect them against this glass ceiling and sticky flow, when it's not the case, right? Like, your silence never protects you. So it comes back down to support and standing together. And you talked about institutions and sort of the cultural barriers. I'm again going to give a very practical sort of, answer that goes back to my presentation. Things like childcare, access to childcare, recognizing unpaid care work as work, paternity leave, so that we can see men take up a more active role. I mean, I've actually spoken to men who say things like, "Oh, I'm babysitting." And I'm like, "Oh, who's is it, your niece or your nephew?" And they're like, "Oh no, it's my kid." I'm like, "No, then you're not babysitting. You're parenting." Right? So, and I'm sure a lot of other women have seen similar or heard similar things, even from male friends who just don't see it as work for some reason. So, yeah. Beverly?
I agree completely with everything that you just said. I was thinking as you were talking that one of the biggest challenges, I think, in terms of the social and cultural issues that women may face is not convincing, but conveying the message to women that that this is going to sound a little controversial, but here goes. It's okay to be a woman and be a leader. And you don't need to necessarily, imitate what men do in terms of their leadership skills. You can learn from the way they lead and adapt it to how you are and what's important in terms of your presentation and the leadership skills that you have. I don't want to fall into the trap of saying that men lead one way and women lead another, because on certain issues they lead the same way. But there are ways that women tackle challenges or problems that may be a little bit different from men. And what I always want to say is that's okay. And I think that as long as women have the confidence in their own abilities, which comes through studying different types of leadership, learning different types of leadership styles, and finding what fits for them, I think that that's really where the focus should be, not on trying to turn themselves into something that doesn't fit with their own personalities, or even doesn't fit in terms of their skill set. Because I think the best leaders are the ones that actually are comfortable in their own skin, whatever skin that is. And they take the leadership lessons that they've learned and they convey them to the audience that they're working with. And so that's what I would say about the cultural and the social. You just have to you have to learn to lead in a style that fits you. You wanted to jump in?
Yeah, could I just sorry, it's just
Sure
something,
thing, Tashni, go ahead.
it's just something you said about sort of these skills being different. And I think it's not so much because like, oh, you know, women are from Venus, men are from Mars, or whatever sort of rubbish that is, but it's more to do with the fact that women have this lived experience that men are not privy to. It's just, you know, because of the way the patriarchy is set up. So it comes back down to lived experiences that would differentiate the way you tackle these certain issues. And the idea that there is any one way to be is not just detrimental for women, it's also detrimental to men, because that's what perpetuates toxic masculinity, right?
Right, right. That's so true. That's so true. And the second question, who's responsible to uplift women into leadership positions? Would we ask that same question if we're talking about lifting men into leadership positions? I mean, I just put that out there because it seems as if whoever wants to be a leader and shows the disposition and the ability to be a leader, we should rally behind them, no matter what, no matter who. And I just don't think that's a question that is ever asked of men. It's kind of the default assumption that, oh, he's a man, you know, must have leadership skills. And, you know, women need to have that same kind of, yes, she's a woman, she has leadership skills. They may not be identical to another woman or identical to her male colleague, but she has leadership skills. And yes, we need to get, and by we, I mean the collective we. Whether it's a young woman in school and a teacher identifies that this young woman has leadership skills, or if it's a young woman who's in her first job out of university and the first boss notices that, oh, leadership, she's a leader, let me see what I can do to help. And that's the attitude I personally would prefer that we take, but that's just me.
Thank you so much, Beverly and Tashni, for your comments. Do you know what? So Terrence has asked me to kind of just go straight into the next round, but if I may, since we're having such a great discussion on exactly what defines leadership and leaders itself, I was wondering if I could just put this one in and kind of gauge your responses on what you think, how leadership and public leaders, good leaders, have been defined in the past. I think in the past year itself, having leaders like Jacinda Ardern, she has grown to become such a great example of what a woman can do, not just in regards to the global health crisis and COVID-19, but how she actually tackled what happened at Christchurch, made waves, and people just started commenting, and people started looking at how, wow, this is what a leadership is meant to be, or this is how women might benefit from this kind of leadership. And if I may, if I could just help kind of go back a bit more and just try to broadly unpack and ask if you, both Beverly and Tashni, have any comments on how people have reacted to just how it looks like. I do realize that this is a very broad, general, and very much philosophical, but I think, you know, we've set such a great tune and tone to actually have this kind of conversation, and for us just to address and see what we can pick out from this itself, if that's okay. Tashni, would you like to go first?
Sorry, that was a very broad question. Could you just sort of
Yeah, sure. I'll just go ahead again. So basically, it's this whole thing. We were talking about women in public leadership and how the definition of leadership itself, a good leader, has been so attuned towards it being towards men. And when the likes of a leader such as Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern came up, and how she reacted to such a crisis situation, how she handled things, people kept on responding and saying that these situations were very much because she did a great job because she's a woman. So I just kind of wanted to lead a conversation and have a bit of a discussion on how we can comment and talk about how that might be an issue. Why is it that it's a woman thing and therefore it's great. It's refreshing because she's a woman. Why can't it just be about how these are characteristics that leaders, regardless of their gender, should hold?
Yeah. I think it's because there's such a dearth of women leaders in this kind of at this kind of level of decision making that people tend to sort of mythologize and make it about that as a primary marker of what they are, because it's so nice to see that can't change. I mean, it's that question of representation, right? You always want to pick something that resonates with you, and for so many women, seeing a woman leader like doing such a great job, they're obviously going to latch onto that. And I think it speaks more to the fact that we need more women leaders. And as we see more women leaders come up, this sort of rhetoric will diminish. So it's a sort of a chicken and egg thing. You can't really blame people for saying like, oh, it's so refreshing to see a woman leader when we just have so few. Of course, little girls or 30-year-old women are going to say, hey, that's great. But yes, I do agree that ideally people should just be judged on of course their leadership merits, but we cannot obviously deny her lived experience and the fact she had a lot more hurdles than a man in the exact same sort of economic background, education situation would have had to surmount to reach her position.
I agree, Tashni, and on Jacinda Ardern, I wonder if we're also impressed with how she handled things, because we didn't see that same kind of disciplined messaging and what's the word I'm looking for? This kind of presence in a crisis from some of the other male leaders who were far more experienced and far better known than she was at the time. I'm specifically referring to the COVID crisis and how she handled that. I wonder if it's just because she handled it in a way that wasn't being seen replicated in other places by men in leadership, if that isn't why people latched on, oh, she's doing this and it's working, and on and on and on like that. I don't know, I may be way off base here, but I just wonder if the fact that she handled it in a way that was completely different from some of the other examples at the time, if that made a difference in how people responded.
Sorry, I know I did the boomer thing. I do apologize for that. If I may, Beverly, there is actually a follow-up question to what you've just said, if it's okay, Tashi and Terrence. So Dr. Juwita, who's one of our ISIS researchers themselves, she's asked that in Malaysia, if some men are supervisors and they actually value the leadership style of other men compared to women leaders will still face barriers in climbing the career ladder. This is true in Malaysia and other developed countries. And she's wondering, what is your view on this?
My view on
how, despite your view on how it's a boys' club, and regardless of how much effort that's been put and how much of a push that has been established, there is still a resisting pull factor in ensuring that women actually elevate and gain such a position.
I think that is still an issue in not only in developing countries, but in places like the United States. The boys' club exists in some form or fashion in most places. I think things are getting better, and I think there are any number of men out there who are learning to bring women into the club, so to speak. But it's still an issue, and it still has to be addressed, and women are going to have to keep, I don't want to use the word fight, but women are going to have to continue to push their way forward and push into places where they haven't necessarily been welcomed before. It's not easy. It's never easy to be the first or one of the early people in a position that's in a previously male-dominated place, but we have to continue. It's just not an option to not do it. And I think following up on what I just said about men being willing to bring women along, there are male allies out there, and it's very important not to alienate them, because they do see what's going on. They do know that it's important to bring women in, and they're trying. They may not get every step right, but there are allies. And I would hope that we would spend some time focusing on teaching the allies how to be even better allies, and to bring along their male friends who might not be in that category of an ally yet. I guess that is the way I would like to see things happen. I know it won't always happen that way, and women will have to aggressively push their way forward. But I also think we need to take the time to talk about male allies, and to help them create other male allies, to open up the boys' clubs, so that women can be put forward in leadership positions.
Thank you so much, Beverly, for that. So I think we're on to our last round of questions, if that's okay. There are 3 questions and 1 specific to Tashni. So I'll just start off with the first question on the gender wage gap, and what your thoughts are on this. The second one is actually quite a hearty piece, because someone has actually been kind enough to share her experience. So she says that this is from Elisa. She's a young scholar. She's 19 years old, and she made publications on political literacy. And she shared that when she did this, people undermined her, and she struggled with trying to stand up for her own research. So she says that she feels very much discriminated because of her gender and her age. And she's wondering, and I'm wondering actually, how do we tackle this, and what comments do both of you have in regards to someone in her situation where she's been discriminated not just by her gender, but because of also her young age? And the last question is it's actually for Tashni. So Andrew Koo has actually said that he's noted your past experience in journalism, and he wonders, do you think that your recent journalist experience, where you were actually questioned by the police for one of your reports on migrant workers, would a situation as such discourage women from entering the profession and pursuing journalism as a line of career? So those are the 3 questions that I have for the both of you, if that's okay. Beverly or Tashni, which one of you would like to go first? Sorry.
I can go first. I think Tashni went first last time around. What was the specific question about the wage gap? Because the wage gap is something that I will use the word fight in this case, that we all have to fight to close. If a woman and a man are doing identical work, and they have the identical experience and background, they should be paid the same, period, full stop.
Right.
And we have to work for that, and we have to aggressively push for that. There's no getting around that. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in the way that it should. But if you're doing the same job, I'll use myself as an example. If I'm doing the same job as a man who has the same background, same education, same experience level that I have, I expect to be paid the same as him. And one thing that I've had to learn for myself is to be willing to speak up and call that out and ask for it. And that isn't always easy, at least for me. It wasn't easy. That was a little bit more of a difficult lesson to learn, but I did learn it. And I think we have to be willing to push. By we, I mean women. We have to be willing to push on that point very aggressively. As far as how to tackle discrimination because of age, whether it's age or race or ethnicity or religious backgrounds, that's something else where I will use the word we have to fight against it. Just because you are young doesn't mean that you do not have lived experience that is valuable and a value add to the research and the work that you're doing. And if someone has an issue with that, that is their issue. And even if you are young and maybe don't have the professional experience to say, can I call someone out on that? You can absolutely call them out on that. And your calling card is the fact that your lived experience is as valuable as someone who is 5, 10, 15 years older than you, because you may have experienced things and you may have knowledge that they don't. You know, again, period, end of story. And that goes whether you're from an ethnic minority or racial minority or religious minority. You have lived experience that is very valuable. And it's hard to call out discrimination, but we have to do it.
That is very much true.
Okay, can I go? Yeah, okay. So thank you, Beverly, that was great. I'm just gonna, so my answers, at risk of sounding a little bit like a agony aunt sort of thing, are a little bit practical in that sense, because I think Beverly covered sort of the policy and sort of moral and ethical and social implications. I want to say, when it comes to the gender wage gap, yes, that it should not be a thing in 2021. It's honestly appalling in some ways that we're still talking about it. But I would like to say that we've stigmatized this talking about your salary thing in between coworkers and colleagues. And I think we should do away with that, because not telling people how much you make means you don't know how much your male colleague, who maybe does less work than you, is making, and that limits your ability to bargain. So I think we should all just be really, really upfront about how much we make, so that we can better, so women can better lobby for what they deserve. And I think this is where men have a very important role to play in terms of being allies. If you see a female colleague who you know is working just as hard as you, and you know is probably making less, then you should tell her, or at least, even if you don't know she's making less, you get talking and you say, look, this is how much I'm making, right? I think that we should destigmatize talking about your wage. For the young scholar, Eliza, I understand it can be really difficult, especially at 19, to try and enter something as competitive and honestly cutthroat as academia and research. I don't envy you at all, but I am impressed with your push to sort of get your name out there. I think that age-based discrimination is a very real thing. It's compounded by the fact you're a woman. But sorry, someone disappeared. But I think maybe if you feel it would help, would it at all be a good thing to get a mentor? As when I was a young woman, it really helped me to have the knowledge that I had sort of an older person guiding me and sticking up for me in spaces where maybe my voice wouldn't be as loud, just because people weren't willing to listen to younger people. I don't know, Beverly, I'm sure you also have had experience with very good mentors. Yeah.
I did. I was very lucky, and still am very lucky, to have had really great mentors. And that is a brilliant, brilliant way to approach it. You can even ask your mentor to help you craft the language to use in your response to someone who is discriminating against you because you're young. I can't emphasize enough and agree with Tashni about the need to get mentors. And one thing on mentors, they don't always have to look like you. They can be from different backgrounds. And don't let that intimidate you. If you're in a situation where everybody around you maybe is different, or older, or maybe you're surrounded by the only mentors available to you might be men. You know, there's an opportunity there to say, hey, this is happening. I need your advice. And most people, particularly people who have some seniority on you, they will be all too happy to provide you with their wisdom. At least that's what I found here in the United States. they're usually pretty flattered when a young person seeks out their wisdom.
Yeah, especially academics. They love that kind of stuff. It goes back to support, really, just finding that support system. So specifically for Andrew's question on journalism, I think that the only real barrier to being a female journalist well, not only real, but the main barriers are how you are the recipient of a lot of online gender-based violence. The threats that female journalists receive from detractors are a lot more insidious and a lot more dangerous. And that it's also harder to infiltrate or enter certain spaces because you're a woman, right? But in terms of being questioned by the police, I don't think that would dissuade women. I think that would dissuade anyone who doesn't want to rock the boat, regardless of gender.
Okay, we've actually gone slightly above time, which is actually a testament to how important and how many issues that we still have to face and tackle in this area. So just as we close, even though we are above time, I'm just wondering whether Tashni and Beverly, if you would like to have any final comments. I'll sort of try and ramble on for a couple more seconds for you to gather your thoughts. But again, um, really would like to thank both of you for for making the time to speak today and to provide your insights. And on behalf of the U.S. Embassy and ISIS Malaysia, we really thank you for coming and making the time today, really. So last comments, who wants to go first? Sure,
Should I
Ashni.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to say, Beverly, it was really nice to meet you. Thank you, first off. And I know it's late for you, so I'm so happy that we got to meet this way. But just closing comments, it comes back to support, mutual respect, looking and pushing for policies that will create a more equitable society, because that is how everybody benefits if we want to look at it from a very capitalistic standpoint. And also from a moral standpoint, it makes no sense to leave a huge group of people behind. These things should not be barriers in 2021, but they still are. There's always time to keep the conversation going and start making greater changes. And I think, honestly, looking at some of the movements, not just in the region, but across the world that are coming out, I think we are definitely on an uptrend. Maybe not sort of SDG 2030 uptrend speed, but I think we are making a lot of very positive movements in the right direction.
Thank you, Tashni and Beverly.
I would just like to say, Tashni, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to meet you and to share this platform with you. And thank you so much to ISIS Malaysia for this opportunity to participate in this event, as well as the US Embassy Kuala Lumpur and Ambassador McFeeters. This was an absolutely treat. It was a real treat for me to be here. And the one thing that I would say, women are half the population globally. And I think it's a real shame if we don't take advantage of the talents of that half of the population. The cures for who knows what diseases, may be in the brain of some young woman who doesn't have the opportunity to get an education or go to school or whatever. And I just think it's tragic that this divide it exists, because there is so much talent in that 50% of the world's population. And I just want to do whatever I can to make sure that we're being open and hopefully paving a path forward so that gender equity and gender equality are things that are not in the future conversation. Let's solve the issue now so that, the brilliant people coming behind us can just live and work and do what they want to do.
Thank you so much, Beverly and also Tashni. So truly inspiring words to end this on. Just a small point. this is recorded and we will be uploading it to our website. So just do check our website later. And just once again, please, everyone, do thank our esteemed panelists for for sharing their thoughts and insights today. And have a good day or a good night, depending on where you are. Thank you, everyone, so much.